3.6 million. That's how many people watch my daughter-in-law Jessica hold up the hand-knitted scarf I gave her for Christmas, dangle it between two fingers like it was a dead animal, and say, "This is what my mother-in-law thinks passes for a gift." She literally spent $0 on this. Meanwhile, I got her son a Rolex. But sure, Elena, a scarf you made while watching Dateline is totally the same thing. She did a little spin, showing off her Christmas outfit, designer from head to toe, and pointed at the scarf again. I'm not even gonna pretend. This is going straight to Goodwill. Actually, no. Goodwill has standards. The comments were merciless. "Girl, my grandma crochets better than that and she's legally blind. Your MIL really said it's the thought that counts, and the thought was nothing. Point of view. Your mother-in-law peaked in 1987 and never recovered." Jessica had pinned her favorite comment to the top. The way she probably wrapped it in newspaper too. I can smell the mothballs through the screen. I watched the video 4 times. Not because I was crying, because I was thinking. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. My name is Elena Whitfield. I'm 42 years old. I live in a 3-bedroom ranch house in Riverside, California that I bought in 2010 for $285,000. I drive a 2013 Subaru Outback with 147,000 miles on it. I buy most of my clothes at Target, sometimes Costco, when they have those Kirkland sweaters that feel like a cloud. I knit. I garden. I make my own sourdough. I go to bed by 10 most nights. I look exactly like the kind of woman Jessica describes me as. Boring, out of touch, stuck in another era. What Jessica doesn't know is that in 2011, I invested $200,000 in a startup that 3 friends from my MBA program were building out of a garage in Palo Alto. That startup is now a publicly traded company worth $8.7 billion. My shares, after 3 rounds of dilution, are worth approximately $41 million. I also own 7 commercial properties across Southern California, a vacation home in Lake Tahoe that I rarely use, and a retirement account that my financial advisor once described as aggressively healthy. My total net worth, as of last quarter, sits just north of $47 million. But to my family, I'm just Elena, Ryan's mom. The quiet one who brings homemade pie to Thanksgiving instead of ordering from a caterer. The one who clips coupons. Not because she has to, but because she always has, and nobody ever thought to ask why a woman who clips coupons also paid cash for her house. I never told anyone, not even my son Ryan, not because I was hiding, because I was watching. When Ryan brought Jessica home for the first time 6 years ago, I knew immediately. I recognized the way her eyes moved when she walked into a room, scanning for price tags, brand logos, anything that would help her calculate where she stood in the hierarchy. She looked at my house, at my Subaru in the driveway, at my Target jeans and my unmanicured nails, and I could see the math happening behind her smile. She had already placed me on a shelf. Bottom shelf. I didn't say anything. I hugged her, made her dinner, asked her about her job, and watched. Over the next 2 years, I watched her redecorate my son's apartment with things they couldn't afford. I watched her push for a wedding that cost $85,000, which Ryan paid for by emptying his savings and taking a loan from his father's side of the family. I watched her post Instagram stories from boutiques and restaurants, building an image of a life that existed mostly on credit. And I watched her teach my grandson Oliver, from the moment he was born, that the world was divided into 2 categories: people who had nice things and people who didn't matter. Oliver was born 2 years ago. The day I held him in the hospital, I made a decision. I called my attorney, Patricia Nakamura, who had been managing my legal affairs since the startup went public. Patricia was the kind of lawyer who wore the same 3 suits in rotation and drank her coffee black from a thermos she'd had since law school. She was also ruthless in the best possible way. "I want to set up a trust for my grandson," I told her. "Education, housing, whatever he needs to build a real life. But Patricia, I want conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "Character conditions. I want a clause that says the funds can only be accessed if the custodial parents demonstrate values consistent with integrity, respect, and gratitude toward family members. Specifically toward me. I'm the sole funder. If they can't treat the person paying for their child's future with basic human decency, the money goes somewhere else." Patricia paused. You want a conduct clause tied to the custodial parent's behavior. Yes, Elena, that's unusual. I know. It's also completely enforceable. She drafted the trust over the next 3 weeks. I funded it with $2.2 million. The secondary beneficiary, in case the conduct clause was ever triggered, was a foundation I'd set up years ago that provides housing assistance for single mothers transitioning out of shelters. I hoped I'd never have to use it. I hoped Jessica would grow. I hoped she would wake up one morning and realize that the world was bigger than her Instagram grid. But I planned for the alternative. The trust was structured to release funds when Oliver turned 18 or when the custodial parents submitted a formal request for early educational expenses, whichever came first. Ryan knew about the trust. I told him that a family foundation had established an educational fund for Oliver and that the details would be handled by the trustee. He didn't ask questions. Ryan never asks questions. That's part of the problem. What Ryan didn't know was that I was also the one who had been quietly paying for things Jessica took credit for. The scholarship that covered Oliver's spot at the Montessori program that cost $2,800 a month, that was me, routed through the foundation. The grant that helped with the down payment on their townhouse, me. The anonymous gift card that showed up every Christmas with $5,000 on it. The one Jessica assumed came from Ryan's father's wealthy business partner, me. I did all of it because Oliver is my grandson. Because he didn't choose his mother. And because I believe you invest in children, regardless of what you think of the adults raising them. But then came Christmas. Jessica had been growing her TikTok account for about a year. She posted what she called lifestyle content, which mostly meant filming expensive things and pretending she'd bought them herself. She had about 40,000 followers. Enough to feel important, not enough to actually be important. On Christmas Day, my family gathered at Ryan and Jessica's townhouse. I brought gifts I'd made myself, like I always do. For Ryan, a leather journal I'd tooled and stitched by hand. For Oliver, a quilt I'd been working on for 3 months, each square a different fabric from places I'd traveled. For Jessica, a scarf, merino wool. I'd dyed it myself using indigo, and it had taken me 2 weeks of careful work. It was, by any objective measure, a beautiful piece. Jessica opened it, smiled tightly, said, "Oh, wow, you made this. That's so sweet." And then she set it aside without a second glance and picked up the box from her friend Megan, which contained a designer wallet worth $600. I didn't react. I sipped my coffee and played with Oliver on the floor while Jessica opened the rest of her gifts, narrating each one for her phone's camera. I didn't know about the TikTok video until 3 days later. Patricia called me. "Elena, have you been on TikTok recently?" Patricia. I'm 42. I use TikTok to watch people restore cast iron skillets. Your daughter-in-law posted a video about you. It has 3.6 million views. She sent me the link. I watched it. Then I watched the follow-up video Jessica had posted the next day. A story time where she ranked her in-laws by gift-giving ability and put me dead last, under the caption, "When your MIL's love language is arts and crafts from 1997. She was laughing the whole time. Her followers were laughing with her. She had turned my handmade gift, the one I'd spent 2 weeks creating, into a punchline for strangers. But that wasn't what made me pick up the phone and call Patricia. It was the third video, the one where she filmed Oliver's nursery and said, "At least my mother-in-law can't afford to spoil him with her taste." Can you imagine? Oliver in a hand-knitted onesie? I'd rather die. Good thing Mommy handles the important stuff. She laughed and kissed the camera. 300,000 views. She was teaching Oliver to measure people in dollars. She was teaching him that love sewn by hand was worthless. She was teaching him that his grandmother was a joke. "Patricia," I said, "what's your assessment?" The conduct clause is clear. Public mockery and humiliation of the trust's sole benefactor constitutes a material breach. The behavior is documented, ongoing, and broadcast to millions. It's not ambiguous, Elena. This is exactly what the clause was designed for. She doesn't know I funded the trust. She doesn't need to. The clause doesn't require knowledge. It requires conduct. Her conduct fails the standard by a wide margin. Send me the paperwork. I signed the forfeiture documents on December 29th. Oliver's $2.2 million educational trust was dissolved. The funds were redirected to the Housing Foundation. Jessica had no idea. She was too busy planning her New Year's Eve content. Ryan called me in mid-January. His voice had that specific quality it gets when Jessica has coached him on what to say. "Hey Mom. So, Jessica and I were talking, and we want to make a formal request to access some of Oliver's educational trust early. There's an amazing preschool program, Lighthouse Academy, and the tuition is $38,000 a year. Jessica really wants Oliver in there. That's a conversation for the trustee, sweetheart. Have Jessica contact Patricia Nakamura. Can't you just, put in a good word? It doesn't work like that, Ryan. There's a process." He hung up, slightly annoyed. I poured myself another cup of coffee. Jessica, to her credit, actually did contact Patricia. She sent an email that Patricia forwarded to me. It read, "Hi, I'm Jessica Whitfield, Oliver Whitfield's mother. I'd like to initiate an early disbursement from his educational trust for preschool tuition. Please let me know what forms I need to fill out. Also, is there a way to increase the monthly allowance? We have significant childcare expenses. Thanks." Patricia scheduled a meeting, not at her office, at Ryan and Jessica's townhouse. She said it would be better to discuss things in person. Jessica agreed immediately. She probably assumed Patricia was coming to hand her a check. The meeting was set for a Saturday afternoon. I asked Patricia if I should be there. "I think that would be appropriate," she said, in the tone she uses when she means absolutely necessary. I arrived at 2 p.m. wearing jeans, a gray sweater from Costco, and sneakers. Jessica opened the door in a full face of makeup, heels, and what I'm fairly certain was a new outfit purchased specifically for the occasion of receiving trust fund paperwork. She looked at my sneakers and did that thing with her mouth. That tiny compression of the lips that means she's already composing the caption in her head. "Elena. So glad you could come." I set up the dining room. She had indeed set up the dining room. There were refreshments, a charcuterie board, sparkling water in crystal glasses. It looked like she was hosting a real estate closing, which, in a sense, she thought she was. Ryan was there, holding Oliver. Patricia arrived 5 minutes later, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing her usual expression of professional neutrality. We sat down. Jessica had her phone propped against a vase, recording. She did that constantly. Her life was one long, unedited take. "So," Jessica said, clasping her hands together, "let's talk about Oliver's future." Patricia opened her portfolio. "Thank you for meeting with me, Jessica, Ryan, Elena." She laid out several documents. "I'm here today in my capacity as trustee of the Whitfield Family Educational Trust, established for the benefit of Oliver James Whitfield." Jessica was nodding eagerly. Ryan looked uncomfortable, the way he always does when adults talk about money. The trust was established with an initial contribution of $2 million, designated for educational expenses, housing assistance, and life-building costs for the beneficiary. Jessica's eyes went wide. $2.2 million? Ryan, did you know it was that much? Ryan shook his head slowly. However, Patricia continued, and the word hung in the air like a blade. Pursuant to Section 7 of the Trust Agreement, which governs custodial parent conduct requirements, the trust has been subject to a forfeiture review. Jessica's smile didn't disappear. It froze, like a screenshot of happiness stuck on a loading screen. Section 7 states that custodial parents must demonstrate consistent behavior reflecting gratitude, respect, and basic decency toward all family members, and specifically toward any individual who has contributed financially to the trust. Failure to meet this standard, as determined by the trustee in consultation with the trust's founder, may result in partial or total forfeiture of the trust assets. Jessica looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at me. I looked at Patricia. On December 25th of last year, Patricia continued, "You posted a video to TikTok publicly mocking a handmade gift given to you by a family member. The video received 3.6 million views. You subsequently posted additional videos continuing this behavior, including one in which you mocked the same family member in the context of your son's nursery, suggesting that her involvement in his life would be detrimental. These videos collectively received over 5 million views and generated thousands of comments amplifying the ridicule." Jessica's face was cycling through emotions like a slot machine. Confusion, anger, fear, confusion again. Wait. This is about Elena? She's not even connected to the trust. The trust is from Ryan's family foundation. Patricia looked at me. I took a breath. There is no family foundation, Jessica. There never was. I established the trust. I funded every dollar of it. It came from my personal accounts. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the ice shifting in the sparkling water. Ryan stood up. Mom, what are you talking about? You don't have that kind of money. Yes, I do. You drive a Subaru. You shop at Target. I also own a $41 million investment portfolio, 7 commercial properties, and a house in Tahoe. I just don't talk about it. I've never talked about it. I don't need to prove my worth to anyone by wearing it. Jessica's phone was still recording. She seemed to have forgotten about it entirely. Her hands were gripping the edge of the dining table. That's impossible, she said. You clip coupons. You wear Costco sweaters. You brought a homemade pie to our wedding. A pie, Elena. Everyone else hired caterers. I also wrote the check that covered your down payment, I said quietly. The grant you received for this townhouse? That was me. The Montessori scholarship for Oliver? Me. The anonymous gift cards every Christmas? Me. I've been funding your family's life since before Oliver was born, and I did it because he's my grandson, and I love him, and I hoped that the people raising him would model kindness and gratitude. I hoped you would grow into someone who understood that a person's worth isn't measured by the label on their clothes. Jessica's eyes were filling with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from shame or from the realization that $2 million was slipping through her fingers. I didn't know, she whispered. How was I supposed to know? You weren't supposed to know, Jessica. That's the point. You were supposed to be kind to me, regardless of what you thought I was worth. You were supposed to treat me like a human being, and not like content. You didn't need to know about the money to know that publicly humiliating your son's mother for making him a handmade gift was cruel. Patricia cleared her throat. As trustee, I have determined that Mrs. Jessica Whitfield's conduct constitutes a clear and material breach of the custodial conduct clause. The trust has been dissolved. The funds have been redirected to the secondary beneficiary, the Whitfield Foundation for Transitional Housing, which provides housing assistance for single mothers. Jessica stood up so fast, her chair scraped against the hardwood. No. You can't do this. Ryan, tell her she can't do this. Ryan was standing by the kitchen counter, one hand on his forehead, staring at the floor. He looked like a man watching the foundation of his understanding crack in real time. Mom, he said, his voice barely audible. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I wanted to see what kind of family you'd build without the influence of money. I wanted to watch. And Ryan, I need you to hear me. I'm not angry at you for not knowing I was wealthy. I'm disappointed that you stood in this kitchen 100 times while Jessica mocked me and you never once said, "That's my mother." Don't talk about her like that. You didn't need to know about my net worth to know that was wrong. Ryan sat down. He didn't say anything for a long time. Jessica was pacing now, her heels clicking on the floor like a metronome. This is insane. You can't punish Oliver for something I did. That money was for his education. It was, I said, and it still will be. Just not his. It'll educate children whose mothers are sleeping in shelters tonight, women who are fighting to build something from nothing, women who don't have the luxury of making TikToks about charcuterie boards while someone else secretly pays their mortgage. I'll delete the videos. All of them. Right now. She grabbed her phone. The videos aren't the problem, Jessica. The videos are the symptom. You've spent 6 years looking at me and seeing someone beneath you. You've spent 6 years teaching Oliver that people who live simply are lesser. You put a price tag on love. You made my handmade gift into a joke for millions of strangers. You filmed my grandson's nursery and said you'd rather die than let him wear something I knitted. That wasn't a bad day. That was a worldview. People change, she said, and her voice cracked. I hope so. I genuinely hope so. But change doesn't start with deleting videos. It starts with understanding why you posted them in the first place. I stood up. I looked at Oliver, who was sitting in his playpen, blissfully unaware that the adults in his life had just detonated. I walked over and kissed the top of his head. I love you, I whispered to him, and I'll always be here for you. but I won't fund a life built on contempt. I turned to leave. Jessica called after me. Elena, wait. Please. What about Oliver's school? We can't afford Lighthouse without the trust. I stopped at the door. Then find a school you can afford. There's nothing wrong with public school. I went to public school. I turned out fine. Patricia gathered her documents and followed me out. In the driveway, she paused. That recording was still running on her phone. I know. What do you think she'll do with it? I think she'll post it. She can't help herself. Content is her coping mechanism. I was right. Jessica posted the video that evening. She edited it, of course, cutting out the parts where Patricia explained the legal details, keeping the parts where she cried and I spoke. She titled it, "My monster-in-law stole my son's trust fund over a TikTok." She expected sympathy. She did not get sympathy. The internet, which had laughed at my scarf 2 weeks earlier, turned on her with the speed and precision of a guillotine. The comments flooded in by the thousands. She really fumbled $2.2 million because she couldn't be nice to the woman knitting her free scarves. The MIL was a secret multimillionaire funding her whole life, and she made fun of her Costco sweater. I literally cannot breathe. She said she'd rather die than let her kid wear grandma's knitting. Ma'am, grandma's net worth is your entire zip code. That scarf was worth more than her personality. The original Christmas video was reposted side by side with the trust fund video. People made duets. Reaction channels picked it up. A financial advisor made a 20-minute breakdown of the conduct clause and called it the most elegant legal move I've ever seen in family wealth management. Within a week, the combined views across all platforms exceeded 30 million. Jessica deleted her TikTok account, then her Instagram, then her Twitter. She went dark for the first time in 6 years, which, knowing Jessica, was probably harder than the financial loss. Ryan called me a week later. Not coached this time. His voice was raw. Mom, I owe you an apology. Not for what Jessica did. For what I didn't do. You're right. I watched her disrespect you for years, and I told myself it wasn't that bad, that she didn't mean it, that it was just her personality. But it wasn't just her personality. It was cruelty, and I let it happen, because it was easier than confronting her. Thank you for saying that, Ryan. Can I come over? Just me. I want to sit with you and drink coffee and not talk about money. I'd like that. He came over that afternoon. We sat on my back porch, the one that overlooks the garden I've been tending for 12 years. He looked around like he was seeing it for the first time. This place always smelled like home, he said. It is home. Mom, why do you live like this? You could have a mansion. You could have anything. I do have anything. I have a house that's paid for, a garden that feeds me, a car that starts every morning, and a grandson I love more than my own heartbeat. I don't need a mansion to be wealthy. Ryan, I need people who see me, not my bank account. Me. He stayed for 3 hours. It was the longest conversation we had in years. The Housing Foundation received the $2.2 million on February 1st. It will fund transitional housing for 40 families this year. 40 mothers who are trying to rebuild their lives. 40 sets of children who will have a stable roof while their moms figure out the next step. Every dollar that was supposed to teach Oliver about privilege will instead teach someone else about possibility. Jessica and I haven't spoken since the meeting. Ryan tells me she's in therapy, which I think is a good sign. He also tells me she cried when she found out about the Montessori scholarship and the down payment. Learning that the person you've been mocking is the person who's been carrying you is a specific kind of pain. I don't wish it on her, but I don't regret causing it. Oliver will be fine. I'll make sure of it. Not through a trust fund, not through anonymous grants, but by being present. By showing up at his school, plays in my target genes. By teaching him to knit when he's old enough to hold the needles. By taking him to my garden and showing him that the most valuable things in the world are the ones you grow yourself. Slowly, patiently, with your own hands. I'm sitting in my living room right now. I'm wearing the Costco sweater. It costs $19.99, and it's the most comfortable thing I own. On the couch next to me is the indigo scarf, the one Jessica held up like garbage for 3.6 million people. I finished the fringe last night. It's beautiful. I think I'll keep it for myself. Jessica thought she was exposing who I was. She was right, just not in the way she expected. Some people see a woman in a Subaru and assume she's struggling. They see Target clothes and think she's limited. They see homemade gifts and think she can't afford better. They never consider the possibility that she chose this, that she could buy the store and still prefers the sweater she found on the clearance rack because it fits well, and it's warm, and that's enough. Wealth isn't what you show. It's what you build. And character isn't what you perform. It's what you do when you think nobody's keeping score. I was keeping score. If you've ever been the person in the room that everyone underestimates, the one they look past, the one they mock because your shoes aren't shiny enough, or your car isn't new enough, or your gifts come wrapped in love instead of logos, hit that like button and share this story. And remember, the quietest person in the room might be the one holding the foundation everyone else is standing on. So be careful who you laugh at. You might be laughing at the only person who believed in you.